Hey, hi everyone. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'd like to talk to you today about narcissistic parents and how they make you think you're crazy. What do they use and what do they do to make you think you're crazy? There are many things, and I can't cover them all today, but for many decades I've worked with people to get their family of origin out of them and to get their narcissistic parents out of them so that their true self can come through. So, what might they use? One thing I think of is trauma bonding. That's an excellent thing that narcissistic parents will use, not necessarily consciously, but unconsciously, because it is effective. When we are trauma bonded to them, then we join the craziness. We join that irrational type of thinking when as a result of trauma that we've experienced from them, whether it be physical abuse, shaming, rejection, the fear that comes from those dynamics from our narcissistic parents, and we experience the world through that trauma, and that trauma continues on inside of us. And so one of the things we want to begin to heal is that trauma and that trauma bonding so that we will not think we are so crazy. I think we are far less crazy than we really think we are. Second of all, they will use unhealthy enmeshment. When we are overly attached and enmeshed to narcissistic parents, and oftentimes narcissistic abuse enmeshes us to that parent, then we cannot see the world the way it really is. We see the world through the madness and the craziness that we've had with the narcissistic parent. Another thing they will do would be questioning, criticizing, and punishing you for your reality. Whenever you share what you believe is really real or what you think is real, particularly when we were growing up, that's questioned, punished, and criticized. And if that goes on for years, then that's the point of healing that we need to begin to take a look at. Because we will think we are crazy whenever we've shared our sense of reality and it gets questioned, punished, or criticized. And what we'll find out is we end up gravitating to relationships that question our reality, punish our reality, and criticize our reality. And so the madness and the craziness that we think we have continues on. Thirdly, thinking about denial. Denial is very common in narcissistic parents and the families that we grew up in, where they promote fiction, lies, dishonesty, illusions, falsification, editing history. No, it wasn't that way. It was the way I remember it was. They'll edit out their part in it. You remember when you were overly reactive? I don't know why you were acting so crazy then. And they will edit out the whole part where they were totally off the hook. They were totally inappropriate or overly reactive or overly intense. That all gets edited out, and they'll look and go, it's such a shame that you reacted that way and that you responded that way. And so denial is very common, which includes gaslighting and things like that, that it just never went that way. And then we scratch our head and go, am I nuts? Am I nuts? And we're always asking that question, am I crazy? And I believe that one of the things that I try to teach is for us to come to a place where we decide, am I crazy or are they crazy? Both of us can't be right. And that a part of the healing process is coming to a place where we begin to understand that one of us isn't right. And who are you going to decide? For years, you thought you should decide it was them. Either you needed their love or acceptance or approval, or you would feel lonely if you didn't have their approval. So I guess I'll have to think they're right and that I'm crazy. I've got a program called Family Differentiation Program, Finding Your New Road to Self, that's listed below. You might want to take a look at, and where you can begin to change that process and gain your sense of reality back, where you can begin to own your own reality, not the reality of people around you who are not trustable, and trusting for that healthy reality. So, what do we do if we find ourselves where we think we're just crazy? Growing up in a narcissistic home with narcissistic parent, recognize your porous inner boundaries. My inner boundaries are too porous. In other words, there's holes in my inner boundaries. And if someone comes to me, we will absorb their reality far too much. And I think of a simple example of if somebody comes to you and says, you've just always been stupid. If my inner boundaries are too porous, that reality will seep into me. When really, wait a minute, I'm not any more stupid than any human being might be. We all have a stupid side, that's okay. But I'm not stupid like they think I'm stupid, and I never have been that way. I've just thought I was. So we absorb too much. There are too many small holes that we have in our inner boundaries. And as a result of those many holes that are there, either try to change them so that my inner boundaries will not be so afflicted with this madness, or we will let them seep in their madness or craziness, and we absorb too much. What else might we want to do? We want to learn to absorb and become more researchers to close some of those emotional and mental porous experiences. If I'm more of an observer rather than an absorber and taking in those things, and I think of Ross Rosenberg, who talks about don't absorb, observe. As we do that, we will find we will be more detached, and we want to become more detached and become more detached from our family super self and the family Wi-Fi that's always operating within us. And again, I talk about that in the program. And we want to close up some of that porousness. And then thirdly, we tend to believe the nonsense and disbelieve the truth. This makes us crazy. And again, I think that's so common for those who grew up in dysfunctional families to tend to believe the nonsense and disbelieve the truth or reality. Again, if somebody comes and gaslights me, early on when I had those porous holes within my own inner boundaries, I would believe what they'd say because it would come in too much. There's a place where I want it. If someone's reality is off in terms of how they perceive me, I want it to come here and bounce off and bounce down and not go in. So we need that shell of protection that we can choose for ourselves. Their irrational beliefs do not have to be mine. They aren't yours. You are not them, and they are not you. And their irrational beliefs should become our nonsense, that is nonsense. If we stopped believing their nonsense, we want to ask ourselves, if I stop believing that, what would be the downsides? Because many of us continue to believe that nonsense. Because if we didn't believe it, there would be consequences and there would be downsides. And I think exploring those areas can truly help us begin to heal and recover. I hope you'll subscribe, like, comment on this video. I want to thank you for joining me. Have a great day and be wise.